into parts of northern and western England and Wales. Ahead of the rain towards the southeast, it's staying dry with some clear skies. Could turn a little fresh here, but for most, nowhere near as fresh or as cool as it was last night. A relatively mild start to the day. Then as we go through the day, we are going to see that cloud and rain gradually making its way southeastwards. It'll have already started to clear away from parts of Scotland by the time that we get to around 7 or 8. And so there'll be a bit more of a showery theme here, even some bright or sunny spells developing once that front has pushed through. A similar story across Northern Ireland, scattered showers, some sunny breaks, but across northern England, Wales, parts of the West Midlands and down towards the southwest of England, here the front will be lingering, and so it's looking quite cloudy and quite damp. Ahead of the front in the southeast, clinging onto the fine weather for a little while yet. It is going to turn cloudier here as we go into the afternoon, but the front breaks up as it makes its way across the country, so barely any rain arriving here. Elsewhere, a scattering of showers, some bright sunny spells, a bit less sunshine on offer than today, and slightly stronger winds, so not feeling quite as warm. As we go later on, we are going to continue with some showery bursts across a few places, a little bit more showery rain perhaps reaching the far southeast, but not a huge amount, and then there will be some clear skies as we go overnight into Friday, into the weekend, and there will be some wet, blustery weather towards the far north of the UK. Elsewhere, many places looking fine and temperatures rising.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Expect longer journey times on the A9 at Tacher due to emergency roadworks with temporary traffic lights. In Wales, resurfacing work on the M4 eastbound at junction 48 at Hendy has led to the closure of the exit slip road, and diversions are in place. In Northumberland, all lanes on the A69 westbound between the A6079 and the junction with the A686 are closed following a road traffic collision. Meanwhile, on the trains, ScotRail has replaced trains with buses between Inverness and Kyle of Lochhalsh and Wick, and Great Western Railway reports disruptions in the Exeter St David's area. Stay up to date at gbnews.com for more travel news.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Let us take on some of your financial stresses and pay your mortgage or rent for the next 12 months. We want to give you a cash lump sum equivalent to 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, up to an unbelievable £20,000. We'll also boost that by a further £5,000, so you really could have some fun in the coming year. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Now, if your head used to spin at the mention of a £22 billion black hole, then brace yourself, because now we've apparently got a black hole worth £50 billion. How on earth do we fix our financial woes? I can hear a little whisper in the ether of tax rises. What do you think to that? Should that become a thing or not? And should trans women be in female prisons? Reform UK seems to have gotten themselves into a bit of a pickle on this, with mixed messages galore. It's been an open goal for the Tories. I'll talk to one of them. And the fallout from the one-in, one-out migrant policy is in full flow. Let's take a look at that. And the Labour Party say that many of the youth have disconnected from the real world. So today they've pledged £88 million to help it with things like youth clubs. Will it make a difference? Well, I've got all of that and lots more alongside me. My panel tonight, I've got Peter Hitchens, the columnist for the Daily Mail, and Aaron Bastani, the founder of Novara Media. But before we get stuck in, let's cross and give you your 6 o'clock news headlines.
Michelle, thank you, and a very good evening to you. The top story tonight at 6, more than 150 migrants have crossed the Channel today, just a day after the UK and France signed a new returns deal. Border Force vessels Typhoon and Ranger picked up multiple groups, with dozens arriving in Dover by midday. But questions are being raised over the potential loopholes in the agreement, which could allow some to avoid deportation by claiming human rights protections or saying they're under 18. Dame Angela Eagle, though, has dismissed the concerns. Critics warn it could derail efforts to smash the gangs. Here's what Shadow Culture Minister Joe Robertson told us earlier.
I think people have become very, very weary of governments of different colours. I accept that we didn't do enough, coming up with these gimmicks and expecting to hoodwink people. One in, one out. I mean, it said if it does what it says on the tin, one in, one out isn't going to reduce the number of migrants in this country, because one in means there'll be one out the other side. So I don't think it's going to work. We don't even have numbers. The government aren't even telling us how many people will be deported under this scheme. So if they can't even give us the numbers, how do we know whether it's successful or not?
In other news tonight, Birmingham Airport has suspended all flights after a small aircraft made an emergency landing on the runway. The light plane came down just before 2 o'clock this afternoon with 3 people on board. One, we understand, treated for minor injuries. Footage on social media showed the aircraft lying flat on the tarmac as emergency crews rushed to the scene. Passengers due to fly are being urged to check their flight status, and disruption is expected to continue. The Prime Minister has said he doesn't recognise claims that Labour will need to raise taxes this autumn. It follows a stark warning to Chancellor Rachel Reeves that she may have to break her promise to avoid tax hikes as a £50 billion black hole opens up in the public finances. The National Institute of Economic and Social Research says Labour is now set to miss its own targets. It's fuelling growing speculation of those new tax rises. Well, here's what Sir Keir Starmer had to say earlier today.
Some of the figures that have been put out are not figures that I recognise, but the budget won't be until later in the year, and that's why we'll have the forecast then, and we'll set out our plans. What's really important is that I'm very clear about our focus, which will be on living standards and making sure that people feel better off, partly because more money is coming into their pocket in the first place through better wages, and partly because we're bearing down on costs like mortgages and other costs to everyday families.
And just turning to breaking news from the White House following a visit, of course, from Steve Witkoff meeting Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow today. They say, White House that is, that it went well, but that tariffs, secondary sanctions on Russia will still go ahead on Friday. A quote from a spokesperson for the White House saying that the Russians are, quote, eager to continue engaging with the United States, but those secondary sanctions will still be implemented on Friday. So that attempt there from Witkoff and the Trump administration to bring an end to that 3.5-year war with Ukraine and Russia. Also, in other breaking news tonight from the United States, an active shooter has wounded 5 soldiers at Fort Stewart Army Base in Georgia. The Army, you can see here, posting an update on the Fort Stewart official Facebook page, saying that it was placed into lockdown due to that active shooter incident, with people on site requested to remain in place, shut windows and doors and shelter before the suspect was now detained. All 5 victims have been taken to a trauma centre, but the extent of their injuries at this stage is unknown. And take a look at these live pictures from Hawaii, where Kilauea volcano has yet again erupted in spectacular style. Slightly smoky there, unfortunately. You can't just make out the jets of lava that have been soaring into the air 1,000 feet earlier this afternoon. It's the second eruption of the volcano in just a few months, with flows from both the north and south vents lighting up the crater before dawn. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with the news at 7.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that, and hello and good evening to each and every single one of you at home. I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co with you till 7. Alongside me, Peter Hitchens, the columnist for the Daily Mail, and Aaron Bastani, the founder of Navarro Media. We've not had you two together for a while, so it's very nice to reunite you. You're both very welcome. As are each and every single one of you at home, tell me what is on your mind tonight, ladies and gents. Join the conversation in all the usual ways. Email me at gbviews@gbnews.com. Go to the website gbnews.com/you say, of course, you can tweet or you can X me. That update that we just had as breaking news there in the bulletins about these secondary sanctions in relation to the war in Ukraine. We've got that deadline on Friday. Do you think that this is going to make a blind bit of difference to Putin?
I shouldn't have thought so. And the reason why he's reluctant to engage in ceasefire is because at the moment his forces seem to be doing quite well. And you don't want to stop when you're doing that. And that seems to me to be the fundamental mistake. People might say, well, why don't you have a ceasefire? Well, because there's no particular reason for me to ceasefire. And putting pressure on, I don't think, is going to work.
Well, there you go. Don't forget, of course, that was all about to be resolved in, I'm sure it was 24 hours, according to Donald Trump, wasn't it? But, of course, the war there does rumble on, so we shall follow that closely. But for now, many of you get in touch and tell me that Reform UK is the party for you. But you've also been in touch with me recently expressing dismay when it comes to conversations in relation to so-called trans women and whether they should or should not be in women's prisons. This has all come about because a new advisor was announced for Reform UK. That was a former prison governor. She was asked, do you think that these people should be in female prisons? She basically went on to say it should be in relation to risk assessments. There's been lots of clarifications from Reform UK. They are saying that that's not their official policy. But I've got to say, for the Tory parties, this is manna from heaven. It seems a little bit of an open goal. Joining me now, I've got Claire Coutinho. She is the Shadow Minister for Equalities. What is your thoughts on this? Where do you think trans women should be placed when it comes to prisons?
We've been really clear-cut on this, and I do think it is really important that only biological women should be in women's prisons. And actually, I do think the Reform position is particularly disappointing because we've had politicians getting into a mess on this for years, and I thought we had sort of moved past that. So to have their prisons advisor say that men can be housed in women's prison once more on Monday, then I think they denied it, and then their justice spokesperson this morning came out and confirmed it again. I do think it's incredibly disappointing, and it will put women at risk.
But correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't it the Tory policy? Pretty much it started off that actually these so-called trans women were indeed in women's prison. What then happened was that there was a huge outcry in 2023. You'll all be familiar with the case of Isla Bryson. What then happened is in response to that public anger, fury and confusion, the Tories very quickly then modified their policy. But even still, the policy remained very similar to what Reform is proposing now. So if a trans woman was convicted of sexual violence, anything like that, sure, go into a male prison. But otherwise, there is still the scope for essentially a risk assessment and ministerial decisions to put those people in a female prison.
As you say, it was in 23 where we said it absolutely crystal clear: if you committed a sexual offence or a violent crime, you will be not housed in the female estate. And then since then, in the election, we said the Equality Act needed to be updated to be very clear about single spaces. And as I said, there was a Supreme Court judgment earlier this year which made it crystal clear that it is legal for women to have their own spaces, which is why I think it is incredibly disappointing that after that judgment, people are still being confused. We are not confused. We have said very clearly that the Supreme Court judgment, as set out earlier this year, has said that women can have their own spaces, and women's prisons are one of those places where we should be very, very clear that it is only for biological women. And let me just explain why. As someone who, before I came into politics, worked with the Centre for Social Justice, we looked at women prisoners. This is 4% of the prison population. And actually, a lot of those women have experienced domestic abuse and sexual assault. And actually, just to give you a sense of how vulnerable that population is, 1 in 3 female prisoners self-harm. 1 in 3. So this is a particularly vulnerable group of people. And to say that they have to accommodate other people, once again, the women have to accommodate other people, I think is just wrong, particularly because we've got this judgment from the Supreme Court, which means we can be very, very clear. And that's why I think there is no excuse anymore. There is no excuse for politicians to be making these mistakes. And actually, we have been clear that this is what we should do. We should make sure that we're putting the priorities, the safety of those women first.
So just so that I actively understand your position now, so are you saying then that this exemption, if you like, loophole, I would call it, where you had the right, your policy was to have the right for ministerial approval in certain cases, risk assessment and all the rest of it, for non-violent, non-sexual offences, you had the right, this was your policy, to place those people still in the female estate? Are you saying that categorically that position has now changed?
I said we've had a Supreme Court judgment which has been very clear, and what you can do now is you can house trans women in separate facilities. So actually there has been a prison facility called Downview, I think it's the E wing, which has existed, which means that you can house trans women not in the male estate. I understand that there are some people who'd be worried about that and you want to protect the whole of the prison population. What I don't understand, and what no one can give me a good answer to, is why they would have to be housed in the women's estate. Like I said, it is a group of women who have often experienced extremely, difficult circumstances, whether that is sexual assault or something like that. And to be able to protect both of those populations is possible within the prison estate, and we should be doing that.
So with respect, though, I'm still not clear. I'm still not clear as to your position. My question is really simple. I understand about the Supreme Court ruling. I understand that that wasn't brought by the Tory party. Of course, it was brought by a group of Women for Women Scotland. My question remains, your policy was such that excluding violent and sexual offences, your policy was that you still had a loophole where ministerial approval...
Let me be very clear. So let me be very clear. We do not think there should be anyone who is biologically male in women's prisons. And
so your position is a blanket ban?
In terms of that court case, in terms of that court case, we had said at the election, actually, there was some confusion about the Equality Act, about whether you could make these provisions and make single-sex spaces only for women. We had said we were going to change that anyway. In light of the Supreme Court, we do not need to do that, but our position had been that we would change it if we needed to. We were arguing for that. I wrote to the Shadow Equalities Minister in, I think it was September last year, to say, regardless of what the Supreme Court says, even if the judgment had not made it clear that women can have their single-sex spaces, we should change the law to make it such. So our position is very clear that women's spaces and women's prisons should only be for biological women.
So there is a blanket ban on all trans women entering female prison estates. That is your policy?
Yes, and let me explain. So firstly, you can house trans women separately, so you can keep them safe as well. And when you say this is all about individual risk assessment, which is what the reform position is, we have seen time and time again that when it comes to individual assessment, our institutions making those assessments have let women down. So whether it's nurses' changing rooms, whether it's women's prisons, where we have seen cases of serious sexual assault happen in women's prisons, whether it's sports and women's women's podiums. These bodies that are meant to know better, that are meant to be experts, that are making their individual assessments, have got this wrong. So I think it is important to be clear-cut. I think you can protect everyone. And what I do not see the reason for is why women should be the ones to make accommodations, particularly such a vulnerable group of women.
Well, you certainly won't get any pushback from me at all on that final point. I assure you of that. I hope common sense prevails. Claire Coutinho, the Shadow Minister for Equalities, thank you very much for your time and for setting out your position. Aaron Bastani, your thoughts?
Well, I thought that was comprehensive evidence of the supine opportunism and rank cowardice of our political class, but particularly the Conservative Party, because Claire Coutinho started that whole charade by saying, we've been really clear. Well, they weren't that clear in government. They decided to 180 the minute they weren't actually in charge of anything. She said that various bodies haven't fulfilled their responsibilities to look after people. You were in government for 14 years, the Conservatives, and yet you're pointing the finger at this or that quango or body. You were the government. In terms of Supreme Court judgment as well, this really angers me. This country is a parliamentary democracy. Parliament is sovereign. We heard for months, for years, from the likes of Claire Coutinho, take back control. That meant restoring the sovereignty of Parliament. And yet we have a ruling by the Supreme Court, which, by the way, I don't think should exist, which all of a sudden meant that politicians could just do this massive heel turn. Well, the Supreme Court said it. Sorry, Gov. Why do you have a job then? You're a politician. We give our legislators, all 650 of them, tremendous amounts of power to govern responsibly in the public interest. So just the nature of that whole conversation is frankly discomforting for me. In terms of the actual nuts and bolts of the policy, I think it makes perfect sense to have just an independent facility for trans women with gender recognition certificates where they can be held by themselves. We're talking about tiny numbers of people.
Sure, so have that facility in the male prison then?
Well, it doesn't need to be in a male or female prison. You can have an independent facility, I presume.
Build a whole new... I mean, we can't even build a prison anyway.
We're talking, I think, frankly, single digits numbers of people. So I think it's a perfectly sensible problem to solve. And I'll be honest, I have far more respect for the candour and honesty of Anne Widdecombe, at least accepting there is nuance here, which there is. And I'm saying that's why you probably need your own facility, for people with gender recognition certificates at least. I prefer that to Claire Coutinho and the rest of her mates in the Tory party who say one thing in government and say something completely different in opposition because it suits them. And people know this, and the game is up. And frankly, that's why I think they're going to get less than 100 MPs the next election.
I've got to tell you, here I go, everyone. You know my views at home on this matter, don't you? It's not nuanced for me whatsoever, thank you very much. The whole sex issue, single-sex spaces, is biological sex. This is not difficult. Your ideology and the way that you live and all the rest of it should be absolutely irrelevant. And if you don't want to suffer the indignity, some people say, as a trans woman of being in a male prison, here's a novel, old-fashioned idea, I grant you that. How about maybe not committing any crime then? And you won't end up in a prison in the first place. I mean, call me old-fashioned, but anyway. Peter Hitchens, any thoughts on this one?
None.
None?
No, I'm an old, socially conservative male person, and anything I say on this subject will be misheard by 90% of the people who are listening as some kind of statement of bigoted cruelty. There's no point in my joining this argument. You'll notice, if you follow it carefully, that all the conservative media tend to use left-wing women to make the case on their behalf. It's not one on which I can say anything which anybody will listen to. I've wasted enough time trying to avoid being accused of bigotry, which I don't possess, on other subjects. This one, I just don't enter.
Really? I was called a bigot.
There's no earthly point. What good would it do? If I weighed in, if somebody said, oh, well, Peter Hitchens says that, well, I'm bound to agree with it. No. What people will do is they will hear something I haven't said and accuse me of thinking what I don't think. And I'm sick of that. So, honestly, you can have it. You're very welcome to talk about it till the moon comes out, but I, myself, will let you do that and stay out of it.
I do feel, actually, there's a lot of people that share Peter's thoughts that say, do you know what, I just don't even want to open this Pandora's box. I don't even want to get into this subject. Luckily for you lot at home, and in the interest of the debate programme, I don't have such reservations. In fact, I was actually called a bigot just last night by one of my brothers because of this issue. He completely disagrees with me, and he thinks that anyone that has my view are indeed bigoted. Luckily for me and millions of other women, we don't care, quite frankly, what names you all want want to call us, because biology matters and facts matter, and men should just get out of our spaces. Thank you very much. Anyway, look, we've got a lot that we need to talk about tonight. Economic black holes was 22 billion. Now it's been talked about as much as 50. Goodness me. I'll see you in a sec.
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dewbs, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record, you say that week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, Peter Hitchens and Aaron Bastani. I can tell you now, you are divided on this whole there's three camps. One of you, you're in my camp, sensible people. You think absolutely no way, get into the male estate. The other group are in your camp actually, Peter, that go either I don't care or I'm not opening this can of worms or whatever it is. And actually, there's a few of you that say, oh, Michelle, if they look like a woman and if they've got their gender certificates or whatever it is, then they should be in the female estate. Goodness gracious me. Anyway, look, all opinions are very welcome on Dewbs & Co. But look, we heard, didn't we, about the £22 billion black hole. We know that Rachel Reeves promised to fix the foundations of our economy. Well, I've got to tell you now, it's not going well because we've apparently now got a black hole that's in the region of about £50 billion we're going to need per annum to try and sort this absolute mess out. It's been suggested, Aaron Bastani, that tax rises might be the way that she has to go on this. What do you think?
Well, for people watching or listening to this, you now have an answer as to why Rachel Reeves was crying in Parliament. She was crying in response to the inability to pass legislation that would have taken several £billions off people on various benefits. And she was crying because Labour's inability to pass that legislation, it's the first time that something has failed at the second reading, I think, since the mid-1980s with Margaret Thatcher and Sunday opening times. Doesn't happen very often. Barely happens at all, really, over the last 120 years, 100 years. She was crying because if you can't get that through, you're not going to be able to make cuts to get this figure down, which therefore locks in, like you say, tax rises. That's why she was crying. She was crying because come the autumn budget, her political career is over because she's going to have to find £51.1 billion. There are, of course, other ways that the money could be generated. Important to say, 8 billion of that 51 billion, or it's 41.2 billion if you don't include the buffer, 8 billion of that can be found from just not moving tax thresholds, which, let's be honest, they were going to do anyway.
Yeah.
They weren't going to move before 2029.
But you say, Aaron, just not moving tax thresholds. Just not moving tax thresholds is a major increase in tax. And it puts more and more people every year into a 40% income tax band, which was designed for the super rich. And,
but it was
now perfectly normal people with ordinary jobs are being having a super rich super tax inflicted on them because they don't move those bands.
But we all knew that. Let's be honest. We all knew that was because it's been going on for. Hold on, Peter. That's been going on for several years.
Actually.
No, because it's been going on for several years.
Yeah, but people don't know it until it hits them, and it's only when this great spreading shadow of the 40% and all the other things that happen hits them.
Well, that's why politicians
love how important it is.
That's why politicians love it.
It's not a just thing. It's a really big thing.
I'm not saying. Well, I'm saying just because it's been going on for several years.
True enough, but it's important. It's very, very big.
No, you're entirely right.
Hit people very hard in their pockets.
Well, it's raising £8 billion, so it is significant. Politicians love it because, as you just said, people aren't necessarily going to notice that as they would with a bump in income tax rates. But in any case, that's £8 billion. They're going to have to find, frankly, more than £30 billion from tax rises. From, tax rises beyond what I've just mentioned, which is a hell of a lot of money. And finally, one more thing. We were seeing Keir Starmer talking about putting defence spending to 3.5% of GDP very recently. I was watching this, and they're just getting the headlines. It means he can go to Trump and say we're doing X, Y, Z. I'm watching this and thinking, with whose money? And nobody in the media was saying, well, hold on, sounds good, I agree or I disagree, but where's the money going to come from? Literally nobody in the media was asking that question.
Peter? Well, it won't happen, of course. So many other things won't happen, and projects will start to be cancelled as well. But what I also see in this is expectation management. I think that leaking it at this level is telling people to expect a really, really, absolutely, totally appalling, monster-sized budget, when in fact they'll get a just normally appalling, moderately monster-sized budget, and they say, oh, phew, it's not as bad as they said it was in the summer. I think this is some expectation management going on here. We're being told it's worse than it actually is, simply to make it feel less bad when it happens. I really do. I think a lot of that goes on in politics.
See,
I would not be a bit surprised if this turns out not to be quite so bad. But they are in enormous trouble, as anybody would be in trouble. This crisis was created by Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson during the COVID panic. It all comes from this, the voluntary bankruptcy of the nation, and everything that's followed, the inflation and the tax increases, easily predictable and predicted by me, are now coming, and they will hurt like anything. And when I was saying to people, for goodness sake, stop accepting this, that was part of my reason for saying so. It's unavoidable. The sums don't add up. But the other thing, which will, I think, increasingly happen, because the spectre of the International Monetary Fund is on the horizon now, I think, is that all kinds of treasured projects, whether they're housing or hospitals or transport, will start being shelved. They'll just be cancelled. And there will be an awful lot of that going on because the money simply will not be there. It's coming.
People have conversations all the time, don't they, about the so-called social contract. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I know many of you well enough from talking to you over the years. You will think that this government has got a damn cheek, actually, even considering things like tax rises, when actually life in this country is getting harder and harder for millions of people, when we are throwing money hand over fist. I've lost count now, quite frankly, of how many millions per day we spend sticking people in the likes of 4-star hotels and all the rest of it. They've got a damn cheek.
Oh,
That's
come
what
on,
I hear you say.
Come on, Michelle. How did anybody not see this coming? It was quite clear in their manifesto. And when Nick Ferrari asked Keir Starmer during the election campaign, what do you mean by working people? when he said that taxes wouldn't be increased on working people. He said people without savings.
Yeah, he said someone that couldn't write a cheque.
I mean, anybody with savings basically could expect if they either voted Labour or they voted for reform and helped Labour in, they could expect what they're now getting. The Labour were actually startlingly honest in making it clear they were going to increase taxes. You couldn't read that manifesto and not see it. And yet millions of people would not. I spent weeks during that election campaign saying, look, don't be so stupid. This isn't just going to be another government. This is going to be a high-tax, very left-wing Labour government. And people said, no, you're just trying to boost the Tories. I wasn't. I was genuinely warning people of a real danger which now appears in our midst in the form of an approaching budget which will confiscate huge amounts of money from your pocket and mine for people who don't know what they're doing. And that is absolutely and wholly predictable. It was predictable during the election. You can't just say, oh, Labour didn't behave according to the social contract. Actually, if you read and listened to what they say, you knew this was coming.
Well, first of all, I didn't say that it's Labour that hasn't performed to the social contract, because actually, Peter, I would say that the Tories also didn't perform to the social contract. This whole mess that we've got ourselves in. I'm with you all. You know this already in terms of the COVID expenditure. I'm on the same page as you. And I also knew and told you guys at home often that there would be tax rises. But my point is, the scandal in all of this is that actually we are throwing money hand over fist for people that should not be in this country. And the problem that you've got, Peter, is it's one thing having to pay more tax if life gets better for you as a consequence, if you can get access to the NHS, I don't know, whatever. When life is getting worse for you and freeloaders, I'm going to be honest, seem to be getting whatever it is that they feel that they are.
What's new about that, Michelle? That revolution happened 20 years ago.
It doesn't matter if it's new or not, Peter.
And people
people
carried on voting for it. They voted for Blair with their mouths hanging open, and then they did it again, and then they put up with David Cameron, who said, he announced, I am the heir to Blair, and they voted for him.
Well,
and then what do you expect? If you keep voting for these people, you'll get what you deserve.
I've often pointed out the pillory of all of this, and I know that pillory is not a word, but it should be. You want to come in?
It is now.
I was going to say, try that at Scrabble at Christmas. I would disagree with Peter in so much as it's a high-tax government, but they're not left-wing, for the reason you said, Michelle, that they're going to increase taxes and you're going to get less, right? That's the big problem for them. And I'd also say that Keir Starmer wasn't honest. We shouldn't say he was honest. His whole thing was, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. How are you going to pay for it? I'm going to grow the economy. I'm going to grow the economy.
You're right.
And barely anybody in the media. I was writing articles, I was coming on here, I was going anywhere I could saying, this is not a plan. Saying, I will grow the economy. Everybody wants to grow the economy. And people like Robert Peston, I don't want to name names, I shouldn't do that, ITV, BBC, LBC, they weren't quizzing them and grilling them when they
absolutely
should.
Weren't. There was only one question asked during the entire election. That was by Nick Ferrari. All the rest of it was just internal political drivel and gossip. But that's the sort of political coverage we get in this country. Most political writing is done by people who aren't interested in politics, let alone economics. So that's what you get. But people do need to be a bit more alert and listen a little bit more carefully to what's being said to them. Then you won't be surprised all the time. I'm not surprised.
Well, a lot of people are watching this. If you did vote Labour, sure, you might have thought to yourself, you know what, yes, we're going to get tax rises, but you probably thought they were going to be on the rich, that old chestnut. Anyway, if you did vote Labour,
well, they voted reform and put Labour in. That was
what do you think to what Peter has just said about tax rises then? Get in touch, join the conversation. After the break, I'll cross live to our home and security editor, Mark White. He is in Dover.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Across northwest Africa and western parts of Iberia, another heat wave is set to continue this week. Temperatures pushing into the low 40s, particularly across inland areas. And with those high temperatures comes plenty of sunshine, particularly across Spain, parts of Italy and also parts of Greece. And those UV levels are set to be high, so do take care if you're heading out on holiday. And that weather is set to continue as we head over the weekend and into next week. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello again, very good evening to you. This is your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now we do have some wetter weather pushing its way through as we go through tonight and into tomorrow, but for the time being it's still staying largely dry for many places as we go through the rest of this evening because there is high pressure still lingering across us, but then this weather system towards the northwest is making its way in across Scotland and Northern Ireland, bringing cloud, bringing rain and some strong gusty winds. Could be some heavy bursts of rain and perhaps gales in exposed spots. And that rain then feeding into northern western parts of England and Wales as we head towards dawn tomorrow as well. For many it's going to be a milder night than last night. Temperatures generally holding up in the mid-teens Celsius, even towards the southeast where it's going to stay dry and where it's going to be largely clear. Then through tomorrow morning, a bright start to the day across many southeastern parts, but cloudier across central western parts of England and into Wales, where we have the band of rain lingering, and that continues its way across parts of northern England too. Behind that frontal system, though, across Scotland and Northern Ireland, things will be brightening up as we go through the morning. So some sunny spells, but also a scattering of showers and still some blustery winds. The front does gradually edge a little bit further southeast, so in the far southeast of the country, it is going to turn cloudier as we go into the afternoon, but as that front makes its way across, it's breaking up, it's fragmenting, so really not a huge amount of rain for many as we go into the afternoon. Just a few showers across northern and western parts in particular. Temperatures are going to be a degree or so down compared to today, and with the cloudier skies, blustery winds and a bit of rain around, feeling fresher as well. Into Friday, and for many it is going to be a fine day, some decent sunshine on offer once again, but across northern parts, particularly the far north of Scotland, here it's looking blustery and it's looking quite wet. More wet weather to come across far northern parts as we go through this weekend, but further south, largely dry, often sunny and turning hotter.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Motorists on the A9 at Tacher should expect delays due to emergency roadworks with temporary traffic lights. In Surrey, heavy congestion is reported on the A23 northbound between the M23 and A237. In Worcestershire, lane closures on the M5 northbound entry at Junction 6 are due to a vehicle fire. In Cheshire West and Chester, a broken down vehicle has closed a lane on the M6 southbound between junctions 18 and 17. And on the trains, ScotRail services between Inverness and Kyle of Lochalsh are temporarily replaced by buses. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, Peter Hitchens and Aaron Bastani. Now, you will know by now, unless you've been under a rock, that this whole so-called one-in, one-out policy launched yesterday. There's been a lot of pushback about this, about the loopholes and all the rest of it. But without further ado, let's cross live to our home and security editor, Mark White. He is in Dover. So, Mark White, this apparently became official then. So let me guess, it's been a roaring success. Not a single solitary person has crossed the channel, am I right?
Well, of course, it's a good day in Dover and it's flat calm in the channel, so we know that that always brings migrants, and it did again this morning. We actually had the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, out there to prove the very point you're trying to make there, that the boats are still coming across. This is not a deterrent. If we're being fair to the government, it's probably a bit early in the day to determine whether this will be an effective deterrent or not, given that it's only now just being enacted. Having said that, I don't really hold much chance of the scheme as it currently stands being much of a deterrent, because at least 95% of those who cross the English Channel by small boat are not going to be part of this deal, are not going to be returned to France. And then there's some questions really over the remaining 5% or so that might be returned to France, whether in the fullness of time they actually will be, because we're hearing so much now about the potential clauses that would allow the human rights lawyers, the activist groups, the NGOs that advocate on behalf of these small boat migrants getting involved and do what they do what they've been so adept at over recent years, which is being able to explore every loophole to get the most positive outcome for those that they represent. They did it with the previous government. The previous government learned to its cost with the Rwanda scheme, for instance. It was embroiled in court process over court process that lasted years. And not just that, even just the day-to-day bread and butter of trying to get rid of those asylum seekers who have been turned down for asylum was often wrapped up in appeal after appeal after appeal that could last easily months, but sometimes years as well. Labour are going to learn this the hard way now with this returns deal to France. It might feel that it's a more simpler scheme, but once the lawyers and the activist groups get a hold of it, get it before the courts, it's probably going to be quite problematic for them.
Yeah, and Mark, this might be a bit of an unfair question off the top of your head, because I grant you I've lost count. But do you know, and if you do, can you remind me, how much are we spending now per day on this whole asylum mess?
I think it's about £6 million a day to house asylum seekers, so it's a fair old whack. That's why the government wants to try to get away from the use of migrant hotels, wants to get them into the cheaper option, which is the likes of houses of multiple occupation. The difficulty there, of course, is that they are then being housed right in the centre of communities, and as you know, difficult as asylum hotels have been for people to accept, at least they're in one area, often, of course, on the outskirts of a town, and people are housed in that area en masse. But when you start spreading them out right into the heart of communities, that also seems to be very unpalatable for many people in many communities.
Interesting stuff, Mark White. Thank you very much for that. Peter Hitchens, your thoughts on all this?
Well, I think if the Labour Party had anyone to lose the next election to, you'd think they were trying to lose it by this policy. I can't see how anyone could possibly be impressed by it. Even Rwanda, which actually towards the end of it began to look as if it might possibly work, was a more effective response than this. They don't seem to grasp. Yvette Cooper perhaps simply does not grasp the level of frustration which people feel as they watch it. And you begin to wonder if this is a government which has entirely lost touch with the country that it purports to govern. As they'd have to have an opposition to risk losing. So maybe it's just they don't care. It is very, very peculiar to watch, I have to say.
Aaron Bastani?
They're not very smart people. You know, we had the new Labour government from 1997 to 2010, and lots of these people rode the coattails of people who were intelligent, even if I didn't necessarily agree with them. The country had a growth model, and because of that, lots of people could politically survive in its slipstream. But when you've got declining economic status quo, when you need to be offering a new cultural and economic model to the country, when the country is waiting for renewal and reinvigoration, these are absolutely not the people to deliver it. Yvette Cooper first and foremost, and look, she's not going to keep her seat in the next election, put it that way.
I was just about to say, what do you think about this at home? But I suspect that I know what you think about this at home. But you can join the conversation anyway. And by the way, I do confess I am live on air, so I'm multitasking. But I've just done a very rough, quick and dirty calculation there. Mark White reckons that we're spending there or thereabouts £6 million a day. And I think that's quite a low estimate, actually, but I'll take it, 6. In a minute, we'll talk about youth, the disconnection of youths today. £88 million we've pledged to try and help the youth of this country. By my dirty quick maths, I think that's about 15 days worth of what we're spending on these asylum seeker housing costs, isn't it? Absolutely disgusting, if you ask me. Anyway, let's discuss it after the break.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here.
I'm Michelle Dewberry. Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GBNews family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word. That's why they're on.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I didn't realise I was back with you then. We was having a little chunter about signage. Have you seen the mind the grab signs that are in London on the street, warning people essentially to be careful that they don't get their phone nicked? And Aaron Bastani was just pointed out that there's other signs on the tube. This mind the grab thing, by the way, just so you know, it's a campaign that's been launched by Currys, the shop. It is supported apparently by Westminster Council, the Metropolitan Police and Crime Stoppers. But I mean, what a sorry state of affairs that you have to have stuff like that on your pavements now. Awful.
Also, look, Oxford Street is meant to be a leading shopping precinct of what is a Tier 1 global city. We don't have many of them. Tokyo, Paris, London, New York, a few others too. You're making it so ugly. There's already so much visual clutter. They just add more and more and more and more. And is it going to work? No. Let me ventriloquise a certain Mr. Hitchens for one moment. A couple of bobbies on the beat would do far more than some stupid purple signage.
Well, it's great for Currys, I've got to say. It's got everyone talking. Look, it's very on brand for them. Do you want to have a chance about that, or should we move on to talk about it?
Yeah, let's talk about it, because it's well, the thing which annoys me about it is that it's surrender. It's saying live with and accept and alter your behaviour to deal with conditions which ought not to exist. It's like those signs saying don't leave stuff in your car or it will get stolen, or thieves operate in this area. To which I reply, well, in that case, arrest them, charge them and prosecute them. It's getting us used to living in a country where nothing is done about most crime, which is the case.
Well, yeah.
That is the thing which annoys me most about it. By the way, Aaron, don't use the term bobbies on the beat. There is no such thing as a bobby, and there hasn't. The last one was hunted down and eaten many, many years ago by politically correct policemen, and there is no such thing as a beat. The idea of a police officer actually walking on a designated route around an area on his own was again abolished decades ago. The phrase bobbies on the beat actually makes my blood boil, because it particularly when used by Conservative politicians, because the moment people use it, I know they don't understand what's happened to the police.
Well,
so you weren't ventriloquising me.
There you go. So look, let's talk, shall we then, about the youth, because we often talk, don't we, about problems and all the rest of it. But what are the solutions then now? The Labour government has pledged £88 million. This is a package about trying to re-engage the youth, basically. It'll have things like youth clubs, extracurricular activities, etc., you name it. I did just do a dirty quick calculation, though, because we talk about all of these asylum costs. Mark White just told me about £6 million a day. I think that's a bit of a low estimate, but whatever. So that means that we're assigning the equivalent of about 15 days of what we spend over there onto the youth of today. I think that is an absolute scandal, but will it make a blind bit of difference?
Well, maybe. Well, I don't know. The word youth work makes me think of a man in shorts trying to get people to play table tennis in a hut. I don't know what it is that they expect to do with this money. But what children really need, above all, in this country and in much of the West, is the thing which they've been robbed of for the past 50 years, which is strong family life, the presence of parents in the home, particularly of fathers for boys. And if you really want to do something about the miserable lives which so many young people lead, then do that. Reverse the policies which have discouraged strong families and broken them up and left so many children fatherless in this country. You might get somewhere, but table tennis isn't going to do it, however many millions of pounds you spend on it.
Aaron?
I think a good youth club's quite good. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think particularly young men, it's good to keep them occupied. They can get up to no good if they're not occupied. Principally, that should be happening, obviously, with their family. But in our car-centric world, playing football on the streets is a lot less plausible than it was 30, 40, 50 years ago. So I think it's good. It's barely scratching the surface. And we have to be honest, we're giving our young people, not just children, but young adults too, we're giving them a terrible, terrible deal. And we need to resolve that very, very soon, not just in terms of how they spend their time with youth clubs or not, but also in the jobs market, getting on the housing ladder and so on. And I think we need a really fundamental rethink across our political class, old and young alike. How do we inspire them to be optimistic about the future again? Because right now they're not optimistic about the future, and that's terrible.
I've got to tell you, Aaron, it's not just young people that are not optimistic about their future. Many people of all different ages are not optimistic about their future. And I know I am like a stuck record, I grant you that. But I find it, we talk about social contracts, I find it pretty disgraceful, actually, that we're talking about, you've got all these problematic situations going on with the youth, but this sum of money, £88 million, I can't help it. I keep cross-referencing it to how much we are spending housing the likes of what many people would call asylum seekers, economic migrants,
Why do people still call them asylum seekers, Michelle?
Well, the term
is just
what
so
they are,
ridiculous.
illegal migrants.
Nobody who reaches France, or indeed Belgium, the other place in which some people launched themselves to this country, is seeking asylum. They've already reached a free, law-governed, ordered country. They're not asylum seekers. They're migrants of some kind or another, and we should stop using this term, which completely and utterly distorts what's going on in the minds of everybody who hears it. I won't use it. And the paradox for me is I completely respect people who want to change their lives by moving from one country to another. It's a brave thing to do, but if you're going to do it, you can't do it by breaking in. You have to come by the lawful route. And to claim that you're seeking asylum when you're not seeking asylum seems to me to be one of the worst things you can do, because there are in the world genuine asylum seekers, and they need to be allowed in. And all this stuff is going to end that. People are just going to be turned away, whoever they are, because people are so sick of it.
Well, I bet they're not. I bet you never see that day when everyone's
it will come.
I bet
it'll come a lot later than you think. It will come.
Than what I have. Aaron, go on.
In the debate around this stuff, people are thinking about the small boats crossing the channel and so on. But actually, I think, maybe I'm wrong, I think the majority of people here who are undocumented actually is from visa overstays. So you can envisage, for instance, somebody who was Ukrainian national studying here, already in the UK, the war breaks out and they claim asylum here. And I know that's a tiny fraction of what we're talking about, but that is somebody who I think kind of defies Peter's logic. But
why here?
Well, if they were already here, I'm saying. If they were
well, OK, but they could go anywhere else in Europe. They don't have to.
Can I also add one thing really critically, is that we're talking about undocumented illegal migration. I think since 2018, about 180,000 people have crossed the Channel. In that same period, you've had 7 million people legally migrate to the country.
Quite true.
And I think the Tory party psyoped the electorate. They misled the electorate to think that actually the illegal number was far higher because, of course, they were responsible for the legal migration, which their voters absolutely did not want.
Quite so. I agree with that completely.
Well, we agree and we disagree. All views are welcome. Thank you, gents, for your contribution tonight. Thank you to each and every one of you. Have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow night.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again, very good evening to you. This is your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now we do have some wetter weather pushing its way through as we go through tonight and into tomorrow, but for the time being it's still staying largely dry for many places as we go through the rest of this evening because there is high pressure still lingering across us, but then this weather system towards the northwest is making its way in across Scotland and Northern Ireland, bringing cloud, bringing rain and some strong gusty winds. Could be some heavy bursts of rain and perhaps gales in exposed spots. And that rain then feeding into northern western parts of England and Wales as we head towards dawn tomorrow as well. For many it's going to be a milder night than last night. Temperatures generally holding up in the mid-teens Celsius, even towards the southeast where it's going to stay dry and where it's going to be largely clear. Then through tomorrow morning, a bright start to the day across many southeastern parts, but cloudier across central western parts of England and into Wales, where we have the band of rain lingering, and that continues its way across parts of northern England too. Behind that frontal system, though, across Scotland and Northern Ireland, things will be brightening up as we go through the morning. So some sunny spells, but also a scattering of showers and still some blustery winds. The front does gradually edge a little bit further southeast, so in the far southeast of the country, it is going to turn cloudier as we go into the afternoon, but as that front makes its way across, it's breaking up, it's fragmenting, so really not a huge amount of rain for many as we go into the afternoon. Just a few showers across northern and western parts in particular. Temperatures are going to be a degree or so down compared to today, and with the cloudier skies, blustery winds and a bit of rain around, feeling fresher as well. Into Friday, and for many it is going to be a fine day, some decent sunshine on offer once again, but across northern parts, particularly the far north of Scotland, here it's looking blustery and it's looking quite wet. More wet weather to come across far northern parts as we go through this weekend, but further south, largely dry, often sunny and turning hotter.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.